Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to day 3 of the Inclusive Leadership Challenge. Thank you for being here. I'm super stoked. We are going to talk today about something that people usually like to disregard altogether. In my experience of doing this work, but it's also an area, and I'm just going to say it and own it because I know it, that sets me apart in the, I don't know if there is an inclusive leadership pack, but if there is, this is an area of my work that it connects in a different way. Because from what I've seen in the leaders that I've worked with, the ones who are engaging actively in self-care, in pleasure, in a relationship with themselves, mind, body, spirit, come to the work of inclusive leadership more naturally. It's an easier reach because there's less friction going on internally. So when we show up as leaders, there's less friction as our start point. Does that make sense? It's just this like it's a groovier sort of situation to roll into. So when we talk about this, we're going to kind of go a little bit all over here with it, and it'll all connect in the end. But the first thing I wanted to say, and this is for if you're catching the recording of this, something that we talked about yesterday, specifically about someone was mentioning that, like, what do I do when I can't, like, the champions inside my organization are becoming fewer and fewer, DEI fatigue. Less people are showing up to the meetings, less people are engaging with the employee resource groups, less people are engaging with the surveys, you know, like culture reports that we try to put out, that it seems like it's just like dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And I want to talk really distinctly about the difference between DEI strategy and inclusive leadership. Because inclusive leadership, we have a tendency to think that that means we need to be just dialing out our DEI strategy. We're inclusive leaders. We should be on top of it all. We should have a really strong understanding of what's going on organizationally as inside the DEI strategy. And they are two very different things. What's going on inside an organization as far as a DEI strategy is its own beast. And we show up as leaders to support it, to help it, to encourage it, to play out the strategy as it is laid out. But it's not all on us to make sure shit goes well. And one of the areas I see with leaders who are trying to be inclusive is they hold a lot of emotional weight when things don't work out, because they're thinking, what am I doing wrong? How do I reach this group of people? I know I'm supposed to know who's in the room, but I'm really having a hard time connecting with our Black ERG groups. You know, like, I know I'm supposed to know XYZ, but I'm having a hard time tapping in. What am I doing wrong? And we start to internalize our own experience inside the organization. And that is triggering, as we know. It's pushing into our relationship with our own sense of trauma. There's not a human out here who hasn't experienced trauma. There's not a human out here that hasn't felt polyvagal stress, parasympathetic nervous system freaking out. You know, and inclusive leadership is being like connected with yourself in a way that you have tools, resources, go-tos, but you know what you need. You know when you're like, I'm getting a little crispy. I need to put these tools down and go do whatever your resources are. That said, as we can see, how many are here? 24. It's not a go-to. We haven't normalized it, I guess is probably the best language I could put to it. We have yet to normalize self-care as a vital tool in diversity, equity, inclusion, in anti-racism work, in anti-oppression. And that is where my work is really surfacing to the top in the conversations that I have with people, because I put trauma-informed right out front. Right? I put it right up front, and I'll talk about this. I'll share more information about it, but I founded the Anti-Oppression Academy, which I talked about kind of briefly a little bit here, but it's a 22-week program, if you will, that I wrote, and we run once, maybe twice a year, which supports leaders full cycle to understand what they need in their self-work, find out your knowledge gaps, engage in self-care, understand the marginalized experience, and then shape that into whatever DEI strategy you've got rolling forward. So that, I just wanted to make this really clear distinction between your DEI strategy is your DEI strategy. You are not entirely solely responsible for the successes inside of that. That's organizational. And sometimes, most times, when there's things going sideways, it's organization-wide. It's a problem in the strategy. That's where the fault is. And that's my job when I go in and I look at strategy and I get to kind of pinpoint and see what's going on and where we can kind of glue things back together, what we can fix and what needs to heal. So we're going to talk about, now I'm going to chat a little bit about the trauma experience and why that matters so much. Because traumatic events, whether it's childhood, I'm going to show you a video which is going to kind of like broaden this out really wild. It triggers our nervous system and it pushes us outside our ability to regulate. Once we get into a trauma response, we don't even know sometimes we're there, especially if we're facing a burnout, if we're facing DEI fatigue. Zoom fatigue is a great example. Like, who wants to engage when we've just been like on calls for 2 years, right? You're just like, no, it's exhausting. I don't have the energy for it. Let me just sit and listen and chill, which is fabulous. I love that. Joya, just gonna make you co-host so you can catch people as they come in so I can see where I am. So I'm gonna go, the reason this video, and you might get through part 3 through this and be like, why are we watching this? This has to do with like people's traumatic childhood experiences. And the reason that I really really quite heavily on this is you have an understanding of what you went through as a child, as you went through in your life, what you've experienced. And once it's that, put your mask on first, then you put somebody else's on kind of thing. In inclusive leadership, understanding the trauma responses of marginalized folks is phenomenally, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to understand and then move forward in. Because, and I get really excited about this, and it's, for some people, it's like crunchy and uncomfortable, like, ew, like it seems like, how could I ever really know the experience of, Black Americans? How could I ever know the experience of Indigenous populace and the intergenerational trauma associated with that? And the truth is, you will never know. But if you can understand that it exists, and we can have really candid case study conversations that help you go like, oh, okay. So when someone came to work and they were triggered, there was microaggressions yesterday and nothing happened again inside the organizations, and they showed up today, they're most likely still in a trauma response. They're showing up at work again, and they are most likely unhealed, and they're on their edge again. So now we're engaging in more work, and we're going to layer on top of that. And if that never gets a chance to heal, if that never gets a chance to be addressed inside our organizations, inside of our teams, what happens to it? Just festers and grows and grows and roots down and becomes very toxic across the organization. And then from there, inside an organization, then it depends on how the DEI strategy itself is managing things that go wrong. Is it centering the needs of the person who's causing harm? Or is it centering the needs of the person who was harmed? And a lot of the time, what we see in traditional DEI strategy is like reprimand, focus on the person who did the harm, like these are our 3 strikes, whatever the strategy might be for retribution isn't the right word, but for, like to react to the situation. As inclusive leaders, where we can win is decentering ourselves, which we're going to talk about closely tomorrow, to focus on how we can actually help heal the person who was harmed. And we do that by understanding trauma response. What's going on inside their brain? What's going inside their body? So I'm going to show you this video, and then I'm going to introduce Joya Abbott, who is here, which is very exciting. Abbott, right? That's your last name. I just said that. And I said, yeah, I just said that. And I was like, wait a second, was that it? And then we're going to talk more about self-care there. So any questions, any comments, any thoughts there? Now we groovy. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to open my thing. Here. Good. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, just so I know. Is it this one? Yeah.
Over half of us have a chronic disorder such as high blood pressure or autoimmune disease. Rates of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addiction are skyrocketing. Why? The roots of these issues and more can often be traced to trauma, adverse childhood experiences, chronic stress, and ultimately, nervous system dysregulation. Meet your autonomic nervous system. Let's call it ANS. ANS takes care of a lot of your automatic functions, like your heartbeat, digestion, and body temperature. ANS also manages your survival and stress response, working to keep you alive when your life is in danger. ANS functions as our built-in detection system, constantly scanning our environment for cues of safety and cues of danger. As ANS scans the environment, it has 3 general responses or states. Safe. You feel calm, relaxed, and connected to those around you. Mobilized. When ANS detects danger, it sends a command and your heart rate and breathing increase. Adrenaline and cortisol are released, and blood rushes to your muscles so you can handle the threat. This is our fight-flight response. Immobilized. When ANS detects that the danger is so great that you can't fight or run, it shuts you down. In this state, our heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature decrease, and pain-numbing endorphins are released. ANS does all of this automatically without us thinking about it. ANS doesn't just use these states for survival, it uses them to navigate through the world each day. When ANS functions well, it moves fluidly from one state to another, 1 minute mobilized and ready for action, and the next resting and recovering. ANS will often blend states together. When we play, ANS combines the mobilized and safe states. And when we are intimate with loved ones, it combines immobilized and safe states. When ANS can stay flexible and fluid like this, it helps us manage and become resilient to stress and negative events. We're able to bounce back and move on. Unfortunately, when we experience trauma and chronic stress, it can keep ANS from functioning in a healthy, regulated, and resilient way, and can keep us stuck in states of survival. A friendly get-together can become frightening. A simple meeting at work can become threatening. For those with a history of trauma and chronic stress, the ANS detection system often becomes faulty, constantly signaling danger even when we are safe. It's like ANS is an alarm system, constantly signaling fire even when there's no smoke and no flames. Consistently living in these survival states can be debilitating, and we often develop adaptive strategies like using drugs, alcohol, food, work, or sex in an attempt to bring regulation and temporary relief. Understanding how trauma impacts us is critically important. There is a whole spectrum of experiences that can be traumatizing and adversely impact ANS, like accidents, assaults, and natural disasters, which are often called shock traumas. There is also developmental or relational trauma, when we experience chronic adversity, abuse, neglect, and lack of safety while growing up. Many other experiences can be traumatizing, including chronic stress, medical procedures, and adverse community environments like poverty, discrimination, and violence. Additionally, new research in epigenetics shows us that trauma can get passed down genetically at least 3 generations. In the past, we've thought about trauma as events that happen to us. We now know that trauma is an experience, not an event. It's what happens inside of us as a result of what happens to us. It's our response to the event, rather than the event itself. Over 20 years ago, Kaiser and the CDC launched a groundbreaking study of over 17,000 patients that showed a direct link between adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and long-term health and wellness. In the study, 2/3 of participants reported at least one ACE. Over 20% reported 3 or more. When participants reported 4 or more ACEs, this corresponded to an increased chance for heart disease, cancer, drug abuse, and more. With 6 or more ACEs, life expectancy decreases by almost 20 years. We are learning that many physical and emotional symptoms may emerge from a chronically dysregulated ANS. When ANS gets stuck in survival states, our biology shifts its focus from the tasks that keep us healthy, happy, and thriving to surviving the immediate perceived threat. Many conditions and symptoms that are chronic and difficult to diagnose and treat can be attributed to a dysfunctional ANS. Our childhood experiences can also keep us from connecting with others. This is vitally important because as children, our #1 survival priority is to attach to caregivers. When the people responsible for our safety aren't safe, and we are living in chronic states of unsafety, ANS doesn't get wired right. The part of ANS that judges what is safe and what is not becomes faulty. If intimacy and connection were unsafe as a child, as adults, we'll often unconsciously reject attempts from friends and partners to connect. Even though intimacy and connection is what we want, ANS feels it's unsafe and won't allow it. Trauma compromises our ability to engage with others, replacing the need for connection with the need for protection. When there has been trauma, ANS can no longer differentiate between our unsafe past and our now safe present. ANS can't turn off the need to protect, even though we are now safe. So what can we do when ANS becomes dysregulated? How do we recover from trauma and develop a healthy, regulated, resilient nervous system? Fortunately, we can retrain ANS to feel safe again. This is best done with the help of others. Each one of us has an ANS, and our ANS is constantly communicating with and attuning to the states of others. We autonomically mirror the states of those around us. This is called co-regulating. We see it in herd behavior. If one animal senses danger, the entire group becomes more alert, increasing their chances of survival. We're exactly the same. When we're with others who are stressed, angry, or depressed, it makes us feel worse. When we're with others who are calm and happy, it makes us feel better. Connecting with others who are safe, attuned, and present is the best way to restore a healthy ANS. For those struggling to recover from the impacts of trauma, there is an emerging field of innovative clinical therapies that have been developed to reestablish safety and regulation to ANS. We're also learning that many of the activities we intuitively know make us feel better, like spending time in nature, practicing yoga, dancing, helping others, and more, can help ANS become more regulated and resilient. Healing from trauma and finding release from being stuck living in survival states comes as ANS becomes regulated, increases its capacity for resilience, and regains its flexibility. It's not about being calm all the time or mobilized all the time. It's about having a flexible and resilient nervous system that can accurately assess safety and danger and responds appropriately. We're truly resilient when we can fluidly move from one state to another. For those living with the impacts of trauma and chronic stress, becoming unstuck is like beginning a new life. For the rest of us, understanding how our nervous system states guide our behavior can help us become happier, healthier, and more empathetic human beings. Collectively, we have an epidemic of social issues that are rooted in trauma. If we can do the work to heal past traumas and build healthy, regulated nervous systems as individuals, families, and communities, we can end the cycles that continue to reinforce our greatest challenges and create a safer, vibrant, and more connected world.
All right. All the funds. All the funds. So Any thoughts that come through there? I can definitely share that link. Yeah. Yeah, I will definitely share that link. Actually, I can do it right now. What comes up there? Any aha moments? There's the video there. So the point I want to make, there's a few points that I want to make on that, and we can riff. Yes, co-regulating and calm leadership. Yeah. One of our top skills is the ability to show up calm. But how do we do that if we're not taking care of ourselves? Makes it harder. Or faking it. And faking it in leadership is like, I'm all for faking it in leadership. There's times we have no choice. We are putting the face on. We are doing what we got to do to get our team where they need to be. But that only lasts so long. And it's pushing into our own trauma response. If we're faking it super hard, we have to take care of ourselves. The example was at home, not feeling safe, even though current situation is safe, but that's critical for work too. Yeah, workspace have to be safe and calm. So think of it in this context, privilege. Privilege is what privilege is. When marginalized groups have a really dysregulated polyvagal experience, we'll just call it that, and it's all out of whack, and it's signaling danger in areas that aren't dangerous, and then they go into a situation where you've got somebody at work being like, what happened? That wasn't even a big deal. All they said was, who knows, it could be any minor microaggression, right? What is the big deal? Why is it layering on? Because they're already signaling danger. And then bam, there's that microaggression that just makes it worse. But from the privileged experience, you can look at that. I've seen it in action in meetings that I've led with people, of somebody being like, it wasn't even that bad of a statement. The connection isn't there for how that's landing inside the person who's experiencing it. And for me, working with teams and having them understand this trauma relationship helps overall in an understanding of like what's actually going on inside the body, inside the mind. Our energy as leaders directly impacts our team. Yeah. So we need to learn to create a peaceful environment to allow our team to thrive. And this, yes, Fernando, and this leans into also creating a space, like I was talking about yesterday, or maybe it was on Monday, creating a space that can engage in healthy discourse, that can resolve conflict. Because conflict is going to happen, but our role is to create a space where that can actually be worked through instead of just tossed under the rug, constantly triggering people. Echo. I've overlooked childhood experience. That's my own, yeah. Your own personal childhood experiences, Jennifer?
Just period. Mm-hmm. You never think about the people that you're working with, or yes, even my own childhood experiences. I never related that to any of my illnesses now, any of my reactions, or the way I respond to people in different situations, because I tell people I'm an introvert with extroverted tendencies. So some of that may have to do with childhood experiences. What makes me so introverted? But when the extrovert comes out, if I'm in an environment and I'm comfortable and I feel like I belong with these people, the extrovert just won't go back in,
Yeah.
So
you're safe.
Yeah. So yeah, you can just relate all that to that, but you don't think about it in your everyday living. And when you meet people, you don't automatically think, oh, they're just uncomfortable because they don't feel safe in here. You just, I mean, you'll say they don't feel like they belong, but you don't equate it to anything.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I can use myself as an example for that, and they talk about in that video where if you grew up in a really unsafe childhood, that the dysfunction is, I don't think they use the word dysfunction, but essentially my polyvagal is always in a trauma state. And I am constantly, like, this is going to segue totally into Joya of what it has done for me to find a movement practice every single day, is it has allowed me to calm down in times where I didn't even realize I was running here. I didn't even know I was running at this super high level because I came from a background of very high trauma, and it lasted for most of my childhood. All of my childhood. Essentially, it was there, and trying to turn that dial down. Now, who know our people? Who's in the room? Can we ever know what their childhood trauma experiences are? Not necessarily. In ERGs, it can come through. This is where ERGs, employee resource groups, can be really strong, as you can create containers that people feel safe enough to share. And there's an organic relationship that starts to happen with it, with knowing your people, and as you get to know them better. But yeah, right off the bat, we don't know. I go into situations now, whether I'm facilitating a large group, a small group, working with a C-suite team, whatever it may be, I go in with that. Like, I lead, there's a mental place in me that leads with a trauma-informed practice of whoever I'm dealing with. There's a chance that we could push into something, and I'm aware of it, of what's happening there. So that's kind of, let's chat with Joy now. Any other thoughts on that? And I hope that offered a bit of ahas, and let that grow in your leadership of like, wait a second, what more could I know about trauma informed? Do you guys know Gabor Mate? Are you familiar with his work? When the Body Says No. It's an audio book. He's written loads and loads of stuff, but his specialty as a doctor is on trauma and the relationship of trauma in the body. It will change the way you lead. And it's a big focus inside the academy that I teach, is this angle of helping people through their trauma without being the therapist. But there's so many cool ways that we can set up, safe ways to kind of calm the body down inside the organization, or inside, teams that we lead. So Joya, I'm going to introduce Joya now. Hi friend. Andres, that's my aha moment. I'm just going to read this. A childhood of trauma and acknowledging it and working very hard on it in my personal life. But at work, I block it off. Yeah, it's even worse. I work on being calm, but I'm not mindful of the level of triggering that happens day in and day out in high stress and chronic stress situations. Yes. And then we go home. Okay. We put our work face on. Code switching. Are you familiar with code switching? It's when marginalized groups show up and we become somebody altogether different. And then we get back in our car and turn into who we actually are. But the energy it takes to code switch is dramatic. And I did it for most of my career. That's almost 20 years. And it wasn't until the very end that I realized I was even doing it. I didn't even know code switching existed. And I was leading from this place that was completely unethical, like just not authentic to myself, because I was constantly in this place of being like, just show up and be the person I need to be in this situation. Great, stop being that person. Now go back and be yourself. And this language there, it's exhausting. It's unhealthy, it's exhausting. And the more work that we can do on ourselves to heal ourselves makes us better, stronger, powerful, kinder. Yeah, we all to some degree totally code switch without a doubt, Jennifer, no doubt. The stronger, the more healed we are, the more capable we are to lead really authentically and with inclusion right at the front. Belonging comes second nature in my experience. I say that like it's easy, but it's not necessarily easy. All right, let's chat with Joya. Joya. Hi, pal.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey. So everyone, this is Joya Abbott. Joya owns Wild Ember Yoga Plus virtual studio. And I found this studio through, I took a future thought leaders course with Femily. If you've come through any of my other workshops, you may have been introduced to Femily, particularly if you came through the Habits and Actions. I partnered with Femily on that project, and we have one on Friday actually as well. We're doing what not to do in DEI. We're doing an event on Friday before we go live for this one. So, and I'll send contact information for Femily as you can't, but I found Joya because I signed up for this Future Thought Leaders program. And as part of the enrollment into the program was access to Joya's virtual studio.
Radically inclusive.
Radically inclusive. Thank you for the correction. And I just thought it was I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen that done in an online course where here's your self-care to go along with it. Take advantage of it if you will. And I did. And a couple weeks ago, I celebrated my 100th class, didn't I? And I have to say, the game changer for me, what makes it possible for me to keep going in this work is, well, Ember. It's that I have created a routine that I show up, and sometimes I will just lay on my mat, and I have definitely been known to shut my camera off and just cry for a good 45 minutes if that's what I need. But it's giving my body some place to put this, right? It's giving my mind a space to put this, where before, what would I do? Crochet and spin in my head? That's literally what I would do, by the way. Like it doesn't have a space for it to go. And what I learned sort of by a process of, reverse engineering was like, oh, this is the ticket. This is how us as leaders and as organizations stay in the work. Like maybe Google was onto something. Their wellness program is epic, right? Some of the biggest organizations have these incredible wellness programs because we keep our people healing on that healing cycle, and they show up more authentic, comes to mind, more capable in their own selves. So Joya, Joya's going to talk about self-care, a little bit more about this relationship of self-care, and we'll just kind of riff on that. Introduce yourself. Yay.
There's so many things you and I could talk forever. And I have to just circle back and say it's not Wild Ember, it's you showing up. It's you showing up, but it gave you like a date and a time, like I need to show up at this time, and that's my time. And also, man, yoga mats really know how to absorb those tears, don't they? Yeah. I have shed many, and it works. Maybe, I don't know if the crocheting absorbs those tears.
It's totally fine.
So I wanted to just say hello and introduce myself. Again, I'm Joya, and I just have had such it's just been amazing getting to know you, Natty, through, I don't know how long it's been now, but I love practicing yoga with you. And it really inspires me to have people like you coming into the studio. That's, the fact that we can be there and
oh, you froze.
That space for you to, your own healing. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. It just froze for a second.
There I am. So there's Natty. Okay, great. So anyway, I wanted to say before I kind of have a bunch of things I want to share with you all today. I want to just saying that the same way that Natty was just talking about how, there are many people who are just like activated, their nervous system is activated frequently. There's things that trigger us. We might already have showed up here in a state of some sort of activation or triggering. Please, if you need to take breaks, if I say something that's like irritating or agitating, mute me. Mute me, leave, walk away. I'm going to do my best to not, say anything super triggering, but I'm going to talk about sex. I'm going to swear. All right. Those are your trigger warnings. There's no way I can get through this without swearing. And I also want to just say that inclusion is not my expertise. It's a passion. It's something that I aspire to, being a part of. I aspire to being part of, the work involved with anti-oppression and liberation for all. And I get really excited about these topics, but I'm not a expert. I am here with all of you as a leader wanting to learn. And here today, I'm just here to talk about some thoughts about self-care and how that can help us be better leaders. So the first thing before I start, I'm gonna ask you to be involved with this conversation, friends. So the first thing I want to just ask you is to put in the chat, don't hit send, but I want you to write in the chat 1 to 3 things that come to your mind when you think of self-care. It's either things you do or things you would do. I don't know, anything. 1 to 3 things. Don't send it yet. Put it in the chat. Everyone put it in the chat, something. All right. I'll give you 5 more seconds to write down 1 to 3 things what you think of when you hear self-care. And then I'm going to count off for 3 and we'll all hit send. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom, go. Where's the chat? What do we got? Okay. I love this. Let's see. We've got rest, movement, tasty food, fun for myself, hygiene, exercise, yoga, hygiene. I love that, Jennifer. Right? It's true. Walking my dogs, yoga, meditation, crocheting, exercise, sleep, surfing, workout, joke, too busy. Okay. Diet, exercise, mindset, yoga. It's an extra, it's a treat.
Interesting. I love that. And that it takes money, Andres. Yep.
Yoga, video games. Okay. This is great. So, self-care has become self-care as we hear it all the time, in my opinion, and others I think there are others that agree with me, has become almost like a Hallmark holiday. Self-care is a Hallmark holiday. You heard it here first, folks. And the self-care kind of industrial complex wants to guilt us, especially women, I think more so, want to guilt us into taking time for self-care. We need to buy those yoga pants so that we can take yoga. Instagram ad is telling you that you need to go, you need a spa day, you need a facial, and you need to go on a retreat at a really fancy retreat resort. All right. You need to go on vacation. These are all things because, but my question is, yes, yoga pants are absolutely for every day. I only wear yoga pants. But I want to know, how is adding one more thing to our to-do list, spending money on one more thing for the patriarchy to feel more comfortable with us, because we are now more palatable, because we are more relaxed. And how is that self-care? All right. So I want you to know that is the lens in which I am showing up in this space, where I'm trying to take the idea of self-care beyond just the Hallmark holiday self-care. But I am going to say that for today, for these last 20 minutes that we're together, it's going to be about you. All right. So I love everything that Natty brings to the table, talking about how we need to be aware of our team, but let's start with us, because we have to always start with us. And I'm going to start with a story, which is about me. And that is that I am a musician. And before I was ever a yoga teacher, before I knew anything about, the nervous system or yoga, I was a performer, and I've gigged for most of my adult life. And as a performer, I have been the front person of a band. I'm a singer. And so I like this too. I kind of would like to compare this kind of what you're doing as leaders, right? I had the client, right? I have my audience, right? I have the people I'm performing in front of. And then I also have my band. My band is behind me and maybe to my sides. And I have a relation to them, to my team. So I'm the front facing and let's just say back facing. I've got the clients, the audience, and I want to bring to them my highest level of energy. It has to be good energy. They have to feel like I love them. They have to feel like I'm into them, and they have to feel heard. When I'm performing and I am not only singing and interacting with my band, and I'm listening to what they're doing. I'm trusting that they're going to play the right chords and that they are going to slow down when I slow down, and they're going to skip that verse when I forget to sing it because I'm focused on the audience. All these things are happening at once, and I am focused on that audience. I know if they need the next song to be a third funk song in a row, or they need to do a ballad, and they need to slow down, right? So I am doing so much. All right, this is what you're doing as leaders, right? You are listening. You are high energy. You are high vibe. You have to be. You are high. You are, well, you don't have to be anything, okay? But as a leader, there is a degree of high vibe and high energy. Would everyone kind of agree with that? Can I get some thumbs up? Some, okay, some not, okay, great. So, and also it was interesting in the little movie, you know, the co-regulating, right? So we're bringing the energy we want to have brought into the space, right? So we're bringing the energy that we want to see brought into the space. So, if we, so I'm going to call this our highest self, right? So that high energy, high vibes, you could think of it like also, and I like the old school vim and vigor. When you have some vim and vigor, you could think of it as your essence, you're energized, you're present, you're receptive and aware of other people's energy. That is our highest self. That's what I'm just going to, when I talk about highest self, that's what I'm talking about. So this is required as a leader. And guess what? It's required in the work. All right, Natty's talking. That's why we're here, right? We're talking about how do we do that? How do we get through all of the frustrations and the burnout when we're in the work? So when we're passionate about the work, sometimes what happens is we start to deny ourselves. We start to deny ourselves, and I know this because this happened. This is something that I do. There's this sense of urgency. And then for some of us, there might even be some guilt involved where we feel like we don't deserve to feel good until everyone's liberated. I don't deserve to feel good right now. And there's a fear if I stop, if I lose momentum, this has to happen now and I need to do the goddamn work right now. And, plus it's the work. It must feel like work, right? So, yes, we could continue to work as if we are monks and nuns in a monastery doing our work. We could grind because, like I said, this is for the work. All right. But my question is, if we grind in the monastery, will we be our highest self? Can you be your highest self? Natty, you tell me, because I know you've done this before. You grind in the monastery. Can you be your highest self?
Momentarily, in pockets.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, in pockets where it's like, yeah, I'm good. I got a good night's sleep. I feel really good. That was an amazing morning. I pumped out a few good hours, grind it out. I was there. And then you lose it. Not consistently. That's, I guess that's the key.
So if we're drained, depleted, and discouraged, how can we lead? And how can we show up for this liberation? You know, how can we keep showing up? So here's my job, is to show up and tell you maybe how we can, some ideas for self-care beyond the Hallmark holiday self-care, right? And my question for all of you, and again, we're gonna do that same thing, or maybe you can either write it in the chat or you can write it down in your notes. I want you to think about, what does it take for you to be at your highest self? And I'll tell you mine. For performing, all right. So for performing, I need to get sleep. Otherwise, my voice sucks. I need to sleep. I need some good nutrition. I need alone time. I need yoga. I need prayer and meditation. I need, let's see. Those are the main things that I need. Exercise. So maybe start to think about, like, what are the things you need? Like, if you were to show up as your highest self leader, what do you need? Yeah, great. Thank you, Natty, for writing that down. So think about that. And then I want to add in one little piece here, big piece. When I was at my most magnetic as a performer, most connected, the band, we were vibing, my voice felt great, the audience loved me, I was in the most sexy time of my life. I'm just going to say it, right? When we are in pleasure, when we are in pleasure, we can be more magnetic. We can feel better in our bodies. All right. So I'm not saying you have to be, and I'm calling in this idea of pleasure, not to say that you need to be having sex every night to be a good leader. It's not that simple, but it's an example of how pleasure also comes into this conversation of how to find yourself be in your highest self. Pleasure equals playfulness. I love that. So I'm going to give some other examples, but if you also want to pop them in the chat of things that for you help you be at your highest self. Maybe it's taking space, alone time, pleasure, also time in nature. Some people that really helps them. Connection can be connection with friends, community. It can be, reading a book to your kids. It can be connection with lovers. Yes, spending quality time with family. Love it. Cooking, yummy food, someone said before, and laughter, jokes. Another person said jokes. All right. So if you haven't checked out Adrienne Marie Brown, her book, Pleasure Activism, is a great book. It's also on Audible. You can listen to it and she reads it. She has a great voice. Yes, music. Totally. That's another important one. So, one of the things that she says in her book is pleasure is a measure of freedom. Now, I want to just take a little side note reflection. Oh, the name of the book is Pleasure Activism. Adrienne Marie Brown. Thank you, Natty. So I wanted just to reflect. So this pleasure is a measure of freedom. And this is where it gets a little sticky for me as a white cis woman. As a white cis woman, at some point I kind of learned that the work, so I don't know if you remember earlier, I was saying like sometimes we feel like a lot of guilt, some people. And for me, it has showed up where I feel like this is on my shoulders. I have to do the work and I've got to do the things and I need, and it took a while for me to learn that this isn't about me saving other people. This is a collective liberation. And that can kind of push at an edge for some people, because it takes a while to understand that white supremacy culture hurts everyone. And so I think for me, understanding that has helped me to understand that the pleasure is important for me too. Self-care is important for me too. I don't have to, I have to be able to do that for myself too, in order to stay in the work. So going back to Adrienne Marie Brown, I'm just reading here another quote that I wanted to share with you, and maybe I can probably cut and paste it and put in the chat in a minute, but notice what makes you feel good and what you are curious about. Create more room for joy, wholeness, and aliveness, and less room for oppression, repression, self-denial, and unnecessary suffering in your life. This is self-care. That right there is self-care. So another question is, do we have to be, and can we be our highest selves all the time? What do you think? Hell no, we can't be our highest self all the time. And we don't have to be, but hard no. Yes, absolutely hard no. But part of self-care, I argue, is dialing into where you are at. Knowing when you are at your highest self, and knowing when you're not. And on the days your energy is low, maybe like for me, I work from home. So if I know like I just don't have the capacity, maybe that's the day I just I fold the laundry and I don't even try to tackle that thing. And that, and then that's also self-care, because I'm knowing if I fold that laundry, I'll be able to then come back because I might have a little bit cleaner, a little bit tidier headspace. So self-care is self-awareness, right? And knowing that it's okay to not be in your highest self all the time. And I think that's an important piece. So I wanted to give you a few more ideas for self-care, I'm calling it higher self-care practices. Self-care equals self-awareness. So some other things are saying no. saying no to things that do not feel good, not just things you can't do, but things that don't feel good. That it you know, this weaves into the pleasure stuff, right? So saying no to things that don't feel good, saying fuck yes when you want to, saying yes. Movement and exercise, we've talked about. Grounding practices, this is where the yoga comes in. But let's say you are in, let's say you're at work, right? You're in, like, you're working with your team and someone triggers you. It's a microaggression, or they say something and you realize that you've said a microaggression and you're called in and you just feel totally like your nervous system just like freaks out and you're in fight or flight and you want to cry, or, you know, this is where finding grounding practices is so valuable. So grounding practice can be, if you're in public, well, let's say right now someone was like, Joya, what you said just really offended me, and I want to tell you all about how that is just like not in alignment, or something like that, right? Someone says something like that to me. First thing is breath, right? So I would find my breath. Maybe I would feel my feet on the ground and remind myself that I'm in the present. Maybe it's hand on heart. There are things I can't, we're not going to go over all the practices now, but just developing your own grounding practices is essential in this work, because you're going to bump up against your edges and you're going to be activated. And sometimes you're not going to be able to walk away in that very moment. So another great tool is affirmations. Affirmations, yes. Having a thing that you kind of say that can help, like, I am here, or I am love. Affirmations like that. Gratitude practices are really helpful. Pleasure, we've talked about sex, orgasm, sensuality, delight in cooking. Maybe it's other sensory things like smelling your flowers. Like flowers really, like, that's a pleasure. That's something that I do to call in pleasure. Another self-care, I'm just going to say, is like showing up for things, like signing up for Natty's Anti-Oppression Academy. Like, that's self-care. That's saying, I can't do this without support, without a coach. That is self-care. Decolonizing your perfectionism, working on your perfectionism and understanding that you can't, that it's okay to not be perfect. That is self-care. Sorry, I feel like I'm going off right now. But
I love it.
I just realized, I'm like, that is self-care.
We're talking about things we're passionate about when we get our hands involved.
All right. So I wanted to call in this quote that Natty said yesterday, which is, discomfort is the price of admission for a meaningful life. Can you pop that in, Natty? Discomfort is the price of admission for a meaningful life. When we're in the work, there's going to be times that we're activated, right? Meaning your nervous system is activated, your heart's racing, you feel shaky, you want to run, or you want to fight or flight, right? You want to run or you want to react. This is, like I said, the times when we need to have those grounding practices. We need to not in those times, try not to react, because we're reacting out of shame, fear, ego, perfectionism, all that overwhelm. So just being aware of that, I think, is really important. And when Natty also said, get comfortable being uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable, I was really reflecting on that. And what I wanted to add to that is get comfortable while being uncomfortable. This is what I want. This brings in the flowers. Okay. So in the work, maybe it's like your workspace, curating your workspace and your day. So finding ways to bring pleasure into your day, finding ways to put in self-care, whether that be the breath work or stretching or little, I don't know, whatever it is for you, or laughter. Maybe maybe every hour you're playing your favorite YouTube, like a 5-minute blip of your favorite comedian on YouTube. That's self-care. That's curating. That is getting comfortable while being uncomfortable.
I
Okay.
love this redefining of self-care, just that we in this last
Yeah.
couple minutes, I just kind
I-
of loop this back. I love this redefining of what self-care is, because that's what it is, isn't it? It's radically redefining what
Yes.
you as an individual consider to be self-care and removing the angle of it
Completely
being, this is a
personal.
treat. This is a treat. Nah, this is my core. This
Yes,
is how
this
I take care of myself at the core.
required. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
required
love that.
100%. Now,
So-
oh, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, it's a need, not a want.
I have a
Yeah.
quick, I
Yeah.
know we're trying to wrap up. I have a question for all of you, and I want you to put it in the chat. Where do you get your best ideas?
Hmm.
Where do you get your best ideas? I want you to put it in the chat. And you can hit send whenever you're ready.
Vacuuming. I love that. Always in the shower. Oh my gosh, in the shower.
Me too with the shower. After sleeping on a problem.
Mhm. Love it. Shower, sleep, run. Yeah.
Yes.
Connecting with others. Yeah. Well, that's like co-regulating, isn't it then? Because your body's calmed down, your mind.
Walk back.
Yeah. Co-regulating. So much co-regulation in there, actually.
So
From
the
Joya.
one
Ginny.
Oh, Ginny, I didn't see you here. Yes. Now, I did not see in any of these examples, correct me if I'm wrong, cranking while sitting at my desk, cranking out work. I also did not
Yeah.
see during a intense brainstorming session with my team. I did not see that.
Yeah.
I did not see that. That's not when anyone's coming up with their best ideas. All of these examples were in a device-free, relaxed state of flow. Right? Shower, there's flow. There's flow. Around the track, device-free state of flow. So vacuum, no, vacuum's not, that's not a device. It's not a screen in your face.
It could be a very fancy vacuum. We don't know.
Yeah, so that's true. I still think it counts for a relaxed state of flow. And, I bring it up to say that, that is also wrapped up in all this idea of self-care and highest self. And it's all wrapped up in the work, being alone, that too, Jenny, absolutely. And, the last thing I just want to say is that allowing for playfulness, which Natty already called in, spaciousness and grace is essential for all of us. That's what I got.
I love it, Joya. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I have one. For anybody who's got to pop off, just pop off. I totally get it. But I want to leave one final question as you kind of think and process everything that we're chatting about here. Do you know when you are approaching burnout? Do you know your personal body, mind, spirit responses when you are approaching burnout? And we all have different ones. This is one thing I've learned. We've all had very, very different ones. For me, and I can, as an example, and the reason I really want to elevate this is know them, journal about them, write them down, and be able to keep that really close in your mind of being like, I'm getting a little crispy. I'm approaching a burnout. What do I need to do to not end up full on into this space of fight or flight and into this space of leaning into trauma responses? The example for me is when I get less excited about my work. That's me approaching a burnout. When I start to look at the negative in my work more than the positive, to me, that's approaching a burnout. I don't believe that anti-racism, anti-oppression, and diversity, equity, and inclusion work needs to happen always, ever, in my opinion, but from a place of anger. And if I'm triggering a temper or I'm like short-tempered kind of thing, that's me approaching a burnout. Sleep, I'm not sleeping properly. That's me approaching a burnout. And my greatest example is when I stopped showing up on my mat. And this week, I've had a lot going on, not just with this, but with life. My daughter's autistic. There's all these plates are spinning. And the example I give is this week, it's now Wednesday, and I haven't gone to a single yoga class this week. That's the first time in months I've let that happen. And why? Because I'm approaching a burnout. And my brain starts to go like, oh no, you don't have time for that. Oh no, you can't, da, 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 da.
And how does that feel? Your yoga?
It feels, yeah, it doesn't, right? disconnected. Thanks for calling me on that. I'm disconnected from myself. I am not showing up as whole and authentic as I could if I would just be like, no, stop, don't do that, go sleep, get up and do yoga. Da, 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 da. So write that down, figure out what your triggers are, have an understanding of being like, what are my placeholders when I'm approaching a burnout? And what do I need to do to self-care? Walk my dog, have a bath, get myself flowers, laugh at some ridiculous TikTok, like that does it for me, but these sorts of things. Thank you for being here, Joya. I really, really, really appreciate it. I will share Wild Ember with you in the recording. I'm going to try to type it in here. It's just wildemberyoga.com, right, Joya?
Oh, Wild Ember Studio.
Oh, don't go to that one.
Or Instagram, Wild Ember loves you.
Yeah. And everything will be in the email that's going to go out with this recording. So look out for that. Thanks for being here. I know that we went a little bit over time. You're welcome, Andres. Thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, comments, anything, you can just reply to any of the emails I send. Thanks, Joya.
Thank you all. And thank you for participating. Much appreciated.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Yay. Let's see. Ooh, feeling refueled is good, Sabrina. That's nice. All right. Yay, that was fun.
That was really fun. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was trying so hard to get all my things in.
It's all good. It's the way these things flow. That's why they're so organic for me. It's not hyper scripted. And because that's how I work.
Otherwise, I'm too spacey. I'll forget everything. So I have to have it. I had to have something planned, but it was good for me because I came up with ideas that I never thought of before.
So, I love that. And it was so uplifting. Look at Sabrina feeling refueled.
Good.
Yeah, like it's how it should be.
Yeah.
Okay, friend, I'm gonna go lay on the ground.
I'm gonna go. It's dinner. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that's here.
I love it. All right, I'll probably be in yoga class tomorrow.
All right, bye.
Ciao, friend.